Can you imagine writing 104 symphonies? It's an astonishing figure, and one which resulted in Joseph Haydn being famously acclaimed as the father of the symphony. Though his productivity was so great, he was known as the father of the string quartet too. But 104 symphonies? What musician has enough creativity, enough tunes in their heads to generate such a catalogue? After all, the brilliant Mozart gave us only 41 symphonies. Beethoven wrote 9 and Tchaikovsky 6. Haydn composed 104. And the extraordinary thing is, the 104th is one of his best. Born in Austria in 1732, Haydn's parents spotted his talents at an early age, so they decided to send him away to live with a relative who was a choir master. At just 6 years old, Haydn left home to be trained as a musician. After 2 years of violin, harpsichord and vocal studies, he was invited to become a chorister in St. Stephen's Cathedral in Vienna. Although this was one of the most prestigious musical institutions in all of Europe, child welfare was less important. Young Joseph quickly learned that being invited to perform outside the cathedral to affluent aristocrats was also a good way to get dinner. Haydn's fortunes changed at the age of 29 when he accepted a job with the Esterhazys family, one of the wealthiest and most important in the Austrian Empire. As their court composer, Haydn had a skilled orchestra at his beck and call, hungry for new music. With such a secure and luxurious life, it's no surprise that he worked exclusively for them for 30 years. But in 1790, a death in the Esterhazy family resulted in drastic cutbacks, and the orchestra was disbanded. Haydn was set free into the musical centre of the world, Vienna. Out of respect for him, the Esterhazy family continued to give him a salary. What an incredible opportunity to be a freelance musician with the security of a regular income. In this new life, Haydn made 2 trips to London, each of around a year and a half, and he caused a sensation. The high standard of musicians in the city and the enthusiastic reception he received resulted in 12 brand new symphonies, which are considered to be some of his greatest work. Symphony 104 premiered in 1795 in the King's Theatre, now Her Majesty's Theatre, and it was an instant hit. The symphony opens triumphantly with a precise rhythm played in unison by the entire orchestra. Though after just 2 bars, everything changes. The volume drops down and the sound becomes mournful. In this opening, Haydn reveals a key obsession of his music, and that is symmetry. You see it and hear it in the score, as what goes up must come down. This slow introduction leads us to the main body of the movement, marked allegro. According to the strict rules of classical music, this section is called the Exposition. It's where a composer introduces their main ideas and we meet the first big theme of the symphony. The central section of the movement, the development, is where a composer starts to manipulate, expand, develop their ideas. Though the funny thing is, Haydn seems to focus on just 2 bars of his theme. You hear this 6-note phrase throughout the development. In fact, it appears so many times, it sounds as if Haydn is totally obsessed with it. The final section of the movement is called the recapitulation. Typically, this is where all the material we heard in the exposition returns, creating a nice symmetrical structure. Except Haydn doesn't repeat his music verbatim. Can you spot what's different in the recapitulation? The theme is suddenly played by the flutes and oboes. I guess if you have enough imagination to write 104 symphonies, then you also have enough courage to break a few rules too. So Haydn's recapitulation is certainly not a carbon copy of the Exposition. The second movement, Andante, features a gentle melody that has a childlike simplicity, though things are not as straightforward as they appear. This is supposed to be the slowest, most expressive moment in the symphony. But then this happens. Notice that sudden stop is actually written into the score. There's a completely empty bar of music. Haydn loved to play with silence. In some of his works, he even used it to trick the audience into clapping in the wrong place. But here, he uses silence for dramatic effect, to magnify the contrast between the incredibly busy music and the far simpler theme we opened with. Haydn starts to transform this theme through a series of playful variations, and so the elegant melody becomes far more rhythmical. In another variation, he adds extra notes, cascading downwards through the orchestra. But then, he suddenly decides to stretch everything outwards, augmenting the melody over a mechanical accompaniment. The third movement is a lively minuet, though this is no ordinary dance. Notice all the misplaced accents in the score. Haydn marks sforzando at the end of each bar, which means players have to force the sound more. But unusually, he asks them to do that on the third beat of the bar, not the first. So instead of going 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, it goes 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, which makes the dance feel a little lopsided. It's a quirky feature, and it's not the only one. This movement is scored in 3/4, which means there are 3 beats in every bar. It's just that sometimes it sounds as if there are only 2. And then, just as the waltz stabilizes, Haydn reintroduces his old friend, silence, back into the score, just to keep us on our toes. All of Haydn's 12 final symphonies were composed for the same concert series here in London. Yet only this one, 104, is known as the London Symphony. Over the years, musicologists have tried to justify its nickname by searching for a connection between Haydn's music and the street songs of London. Could the fourth and final movement of the symphony hold the answer? It's a great tune, and yes, it does sound a bit like hot cross buns. But actually, its true roots lie much further afield in Croatia, and the folk song Oj Jelena. Here's what the original Croatian melody sounded like. This folk-like simplicity doesn't last very long in the finale. Haydn quickly transforms it into something far more sophisticated. The most impressive thing about this music is that after 103 symphonies, Haydn was still able to craft something that sounded fresh and exciting. If you compare that to a typical TV series, you know, the ones that go on for years and years, isn't there always a point when you think, okay, now they've run out of ideas? But not Haydn. His 104th symphony is music by someone who was absolutely at the top of their game. Aged 63, Haydn was writing with more zest and vigour than ever before.